Imagine walking through a valley where the trees aren't made of wood, but of people, thousands of bodies, pale and lifeless, impaled on tall wooden stakes, their mouths frozen mid-scream, their eyes dried open by the wind. The smell of rotting flesh clogs your throat, flies but so loud it drowns your thoughts. And above all there's silence, because no one dares speak the name of the man who did this. They called him Vlad the Impaler. He called this horror justice. A prince molded by blood, Vlad was born into terror. His father, Vlad Dracula, was part of a secret order called the Order of the Dragon, sworn to defend Christianity against the Ottomans. But loyalty meant nothing in Wallachia. Betrayal came from within. Enemies of his father captured Vlad and his younger brother Radu, handing them over to the Ottomans as political hostages. In those years, Vlad learned how power worked. He watched beatings. He heard the cries of prisoners behind stone walls. And slowly, the boy became something else. A weapon sharpened by humiliation. When he returned to his homeland years later, he didn't just want the throne. He wanted revenge. The merchant's warning. When Vlad took power in 1456, he did it with fire, blood, and a clear message. Disobedience would not be forgiven. One day, a group of foreign merchants from a nearby town of Brasov complained. They said Vlad's taxes were unfair. They said they should be treated like royalty. Vlad invited their leaders to his castle for a discussion. What happened next sent shockwaves across Europe. Instead of a conversation, Vlad had each man seized. Their arms were tied behind their backs. Then thick wooden stakes were forced through their bodies, not quickly but slowly, to ensure agony. These weren't criminals. They were businessmen. Their bodies were left outside the walls to rot, a warning nailed into flesh. And it worked. No one from Brasov complained again. The banquet of the dead. This was not a man who punished in secret. He made punishment a performance. One of the most chilling stories comes from a banquet Vlad threw in 1459. He invited dozens of boyars, noblemen who had once betrayed his father. They came dressed in silk, smiling, thinking they were safe. He served them food, wine. He listened to their laughter. Then his tone changed. Vlad accused them of treason, of disloyalty, of weakness. Before they could respond, soldiers burst in. Some nobles were stabbed on the spot. Others were chained and marched out. But for a select few, Vlad had something worse planned. Outside the hall, massive stakes had already been prepared. Some boyars watched as their friends were stripped, tied and impaled alive, forced down onto poles so slowly that it could take hours, sometimes a full day, to die. Vlad didn't flinch. He stood among the screams. He believed this was justice, and that fear would keep his kingdom in line. The foreign envoys who refused to remove their hats. Even his diplomacy was dipped in cruelty. 2 Ottoman envoys arrived at Vlad's court. They wore turbans and, according to their custom, refused to remove them in the prince's presence. Vlad asked why. They told him it was tradition. He smiled. "If it is your custom to wear hats," he said, "then you shall keep them forever." He ordered his guards to take iron nails and hammer the turbans into the men's skulls, not metaphorically, not with ceremony, just blood, bone, and metal. The men screamed until they dropped. The message was clear. Tradition doesn't protect you here. The impalement field, Vlad's most infamous act, took place in 1462. The Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II marched toward Wallachia with an army of over 100,000 men, expecting to crush the small principality easily. But when his soldiers reached the capital of Targovist, they stopped. Some vomited. Some turned away. Before them stretched a plain filled with the dead. Over 20,000 people impaled on stakes. Women, men, children, all rotting in the sun, their bodies lifted like grotesque banners. Birds had pecked away at their faces. Some corpses twitched from the movement of worms beneath their skin. These weren't just executed criminals. They were prisoners of war, civilians, enemies, and maybe even a few who had done nothing wrong at all. The Sultan turned around. He left Wallachia without a fight. Vlad's strategy had worked. He had used horror itself as a weapon. The woman with the dirty shirt. Not all of Vlad's victims were warriors or nobles. One tale tells of a young woman whose crime was simple. Her shirt was dirty. She had not washed it properly. Vlad said this meant she was lazy, and laziness, in his eyes, was close to treason. He had her stripped and impaled outside the village. He ordered the town to watch, and then he turned to the crowd and asked, "Do any of you now wish to forget your duties?" No one answered. They just nodded and scrubbed their clothes harder that night. The golden cup. Vlad wanted fear, but also control. He placed a golden cup at a public fountain in his capital. Anyone could drink from it, but if anyone stole it, they would die. According to chroniclers, that cup remained untouched the entire time Vlad ruled. Not because the people were good, but because they knew what would happen. They had seen the stakes. They had heard the screams. And they didn't want to be the next tree in Vlad's forest of death. The sick and the poor. Vlad didn't just punish enemies. He turned on his own people when they failed to meet his harsh standards. One of his most disturbing acts involved the poor, the sick, the unwanted. It began with a feast. He invited the beggars of his capital city to a large hall. Dozens arrived, hobbling on crutches, coughing, weak with hunger. They were told food and shelter were waiting for them. Inside, the tables were full. The fireplace roared. They were fed meat, bread, wine, more than they had seen in months. Then Vlad made his move. He locked the doors, ordered the hall to be set on fire, and stood outside as the screams rose into the night. Why? Because, he said, they were useless to the world. He believed poverty was a crime, and that mercy made rulers weak. The wife who complained. There's a story of a woman, Vlad's own wife, who dared to speak up. One evening, she made a simple complaint. She said life in the palace was too harsh, that she missed a piece of her childhood, that Vlad was cold, even cruel. He said nothing, just looked at her. The next morning, servants found her body in the courtyard. She had been thrown from the tower window. Some say she jumped. Others say Vlad pushed her. But either way, her death was never questioned. Not by his court, not by his people, because everyone had learned the same lesson. Even a whispered defiance could mean death. The ditch of limbs. During a campaign against the Saxons, Vlad captured a village suspected of aiding his enemies. But he didn't burn it. He didn't pillage it. He did something worse. He had the men's arms and legs chopped off, but left them alive. Their bleeding bodies were thrown into a massive ditch, where they groaned and screamed for hours, until they died of pain, blood loss, or silence. The ditch remained open. The corpses rotted in the sun. No one dared to cover them. It became a monument to fear. The children who played war. In another town, Vlad watched a group of children playing. They were pretending to be soldiers. Some were capturing others, tying them up with string and tossing stones. Most adults laughed, but Vlad saw something else. He had them arrested. He believed children who played at rebellion would become real rebels. So he ordered a public execution. Dozens of villagers gathered, thinking it was some kind of warning for thieves. They watched in horror as the children were brought out and impaled. No trial, no questions, Just a message burned into every witness's mind. Even play could be punished. The Feast of Death. There's a tale of a time when Vlad invited rival leaders to a banquet, but this wasn't for peace. He had poisoned wine served to them all, then watched as they laughed, coughed, gasped, and fell. Some died on the spot. Others foamed at the mouth, convulsing before collapsing, and while they twitched on the floor, Vlad kept eating. He wiped his mouth calmly, sipped wine. For him, killing wasn't rage. It was theater, and he was always a director. The Field of Mothers. After one rebellion, Vlad ordered the mass execution of women, not warriors, not traitors, mothers. He claimed their sons had turned against him, so he punished the roots, not the branches. Dozens were stripped and dragged into a field. Some clutched babies, some begged for mercy. None received it. One by one, they were impaled. The ground soaked red. The cries of the children echoed through the trees. Villagers who heard it locked their doors and prayed that silence would save them. The final forest. Near the end of his reign, as enemies closed in, Vlad made a final display of horror. In the forest near his fortress, he ordered a last wave of impalements. Not hundreds, thousands, criminals, servants, priests, anyone suspected of weakness or betrayal. Each stake stood 20 feet tall. Each body placed at different stages of decay. Some fresh, some bones. The goal wasn't to kill. It was to turn the land itself into a wall of terror. And when enemy scouts entered the area, they didn't see a kingdom. They saw a graveyard standing upright. Death is a signature. Vlad the Impaler didn't hide his cruelty. He carved it into the world around him. Used it like ink. Used it like fire. To him, impalement wasn't just punishment. It was order. It was control. It was his way of writing his name in history. And he succeeded. Centuries later, his legend still haunts Europe. They built the myth of Dracula from his bones. But Vlad didn't need fangs. He had spikes, and he made the world remember them.